What I do is inconsequential. Why I do what I do is I get to shorten people's journeys every day. What I love about our hospitality industry is that it's our mission to make people feel cared for while on their journeys. Together, we'll explore what hospitality means in the built environment, in business, and in our daily lives. I'm Dan Ryan, and this is Defining Hospitality. Today's guest is committed to elevating communities and creating wealth through hospitality ownership and leadership. She's the founder of conference programs specifically benefiting the underrepresented and underestimated of the hospitality industry, including HLT 100. She proudly serves on the boards of organizations such as the National Society of Minorities in Hospitality and NABHood. She's also a previous guest, and I'm super excited to have her back because she's also the founder of Hospitality Hued, which is an in-person gathering. She likes to call it an unconference, which focuses on ascension for Black and Brown hospitality leaders, which actually is happening on August 7th and 8th in New Orleans, Louisiana. So be sure to check that out. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back Ashli Johnson. Welcome, Ashli.
Greetings and salutations. So good to be here with you, Dan.
Yeah, it's great to be here. And I think it's so funny. I just called you to reach out the other day, and because I was in DC to see if you were around, and you're like, yeah, I'm doing different things, and I moved to Charlotte. And I'm like, holy shit, I missed the memo. So I was really excited to hear about what you're doing with Hospitality Hued. Very excited. And it's also this August, so I suggest that people check it out. But I just welcome back, and yeah.
Thank you.
I guess the first thing I want to ask you, Ashli, is, and it's also embarrassing too. I just want to let everyone know how embarrassing this is because we saw each other a couple of times between when we spoke yesterday and also earlier. I don't know, like at HD Vegas, and then I think I saw you.
Yeah.
You saw each other at Alice and probably somewhere else. And this is why you always have to ask people, what are you up to? Not just, hi, it's great to see you.
Yes. Well, I mean, the last time I saw you, it was from afar, so I'll let it slide. Yeah. All good.
Well, I'm so excited for you and also for Hospitality Hued. But one thing I wanted to check in with you first, I ask everyone how you define hospitality or what hospitality means to you. And so the last time we spoke, when you were guest version 1.0, you were at Howard University. You were setting up the Marriott-Sorenson School of Hospitality there.
Mm-hmm.
And really, that was one of the most impactful experiences I had at one of our industry events. So thank you for that. But how do you define hospitality, number one, or has it changed since your experience there and as you've been on your journey?
Yeah. So I believe in our previous recording, I would have defined hospitality as the business of service. I mean, it is still a business, one that we all know and love. I do think, it has maybe evolved just a bit. And I would say that evolution has come in part because of sort of this transitionary definition of how we interact with DEI. And so I think, hospitality is still trying to really fully get a grip on how we can be the most impactful when it comes to conversations of equity and inclusion. And that is on all fronts. It's not only, an employment issue, it is a supplier diversity issue, it is of concern in leadership ranks and ownership ranks. And so while I think the definition has remained the same, I think how we interact with hospitality is changing.
Mm. So when I read the intro for Hospitality Hued, it's really, you're focusing on bringing up or the ascension of Black and Brown hospitality leaders. Not even actually bringing up, but like identifying them, giving them a voice or a platform to speak at, but also inspiring others. One of the things that have come up numerous times in these conversations is the hospitality industry especially on the operations side, um, it's very, very, very diverse. But that diversity tends to be at the lower ends of the org chart. And you are very passionate about having that diversity correlate more to leadership ownership as well, because it's not getting the job done. So,
Absolutely.
and when I say it, I said, yeah, we're not getting the job done. So what's your thinking on this now? Like what's the dislocation that you're seeing? And then aside from just that dislocation, which maybe I just said what it is, but um, in addition to Hospitality Hued and working with Howard and all the other boards that you serve on, like I love solutions. Like what are you seeing out there as far as, are we making progress? What else? What more can we do? And yeah, walk us through it.
Yeah. So I think that hospitality leaders, particularly Black and Brown hospitality leaders, um, are experiencing a great amount of frustration right now. As you know, most folks that work in hospitality, they've been in the space for quite some time. And I think in a lot of instances, people were sort of prescribed a path. If you do A, that gets you B, and eventually this will get you to C. And I think a lot of particularly Black and Brown leaders in the space have followed the prescribed recipe, but it has not yielded the results that they were initially promised. One of the reasons why I started Hospitality Hued is because over time, Dan, you know, I see you at conferences all the time. We are what I would consider to be highly conferenced. One thing that I noticed over the course of my career is that most Black and Brown leaders are chronically unconferenced. We don't see a ton of diversity in most of the industry events that we find ourselves in. And I'm of the belief that because this particular population of people are so underconferenced, it has led to them being under networked. And so, because these networks that Black and Brown professionals have, of course, built over the course of their career have been helpful, but they have not been helpful in the ways that is needed for them to actually ascend through the ranks of industry. To your point, reaching executive level leadership roles and also seeking out opportunities for equity and ownership in hospitality.
Hmm. So one of the things that I'm surprised by is I feel like every industry right now is starved for good people, right?
Yeah.
Let's just say starved for people. Unemployment is at historic lows, and starved for good people. But I've said this repeatedly on my podcast, and what I'm hearing you say is making me think maybe I'm just seeing it or saying it incorrectly. But I believe, especially in the hospitality industry, because everyone got so stung during COVID that who were working in it that they left and might not want to come back or have come back. But I believe, and this is why I want you to correct me on my belief here or help me modulate it. I think that if you are working in hospitality and they're so starved for great people, that I think that hospitality, from starting at the lower levels to getting up into management and leadership and ownership, I think that there's a very steep career path in hospitality because of the lack of people who left and don't want to come back. How am I
Yep.
seeing this? How do I need to look at this differently?
So, Dan, you know, I've been known to have unpopular opinions from time to time.
I love them.
And one of those unpopular opinions, and you know, I'm sure that you've heard this, is that you know hospitality needs to do a better PR job when promoting our industry as a viable career to all people and persons. You know, one of the things that we all love to say is that hospitality is the place where you can start out as a dishwasher and you can end up as a CEO. And one of my unpopular opinions that I've, you know, stated at this point many times in meetings and on other platforms is that that notion is not applicable to Black people, right? Like there are not, I can maybe think of one individual that started in hospitality as a dishwasher and actually ascended up the ranks, not quite a CEO, but into a president role. That just has not been the career pathway for most people that look like me.
Mm.
It's just the honest truth. And to your point, it would make sense, right? That after um, a global pandemic virtually decimated business for months on end. Lots of people left. I think that did leave a lot of professionals discouraged and sort of disheartened because so many, again, to your point, where we see the most representation amongst Black and Brown leaders is that in lower level roles or they are at the property level. And so they were really the first to be sort of impacted by those furloughs and layoffs and job eliminations.
Mm.
But at the same time, I do see that a lot of these folks have remained super loyal to hospitality. They've returned to their roles and still are not seeing opportunities to step out of what they're currently doing. If I had a dollar or a dime, Dan, for every conversation I have on a weekly basis with someone who's saying, "Hey, I've been a GM for 15 years. I obviously have my property down pat. I understand the operations. I can make the numbers jump. I'd really love to step into the next stage in my career. I'd love to work in a regional capacity, potentially work in a corporate role." And there just is not a pathway to doing something else.
Hmm.
And they are finding some friction, I would say, in identifying leaders that are willing to support that elevation to the next level.
And this is, my brain is racing right now because it's like it's infuriating, first of all.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like, if you were to go down to root causes, and I know you've thought about this a lot, and you're doing, and not just thought about it and talked about it, you're actually doing things. And like, you talk about a hospitality network, like, I'm envious of yours, right? You have really built this incredible network for you, and you're also, and I think that's why I think we enjoy each other so much, because I love my network.
Ooh.
Like, it's amazing, and I feel like we love connecting people and helping put them in
Yeah.
front of the right people, and almost acting as like a cultural filter, from the sense of like, not like culture is from an anthropological point of view, but culture from like,
Yeah.
okay, I know who you are, I know who they are. I think you guys would find some common ground.
Yeah.
What do you think is what's holding back that ascension, or holding back that next step? And aside from all the things that you're doing to help ameliorate the situation, like, what else can be done?
Yeah. So I do believe that there is a bit of a unspoken, unwritten guideline or rule to the game, right? If we were just basing career progression off of textbook, it means that we go to school, we study, we graduate, we get a job, we stay in that job until someone taps us, and then we move into the next role, and then we wait until someone taps us, and we just sort of I think a lot of professionals have sort of been taught, or they come from the school of thought that, hey, you just keep your head down, do your job, and all will end well for you. But the unspoken piece really is about having access to a network and putting yourself in proximity of power and influence. And one of the ways that that happens is through conference attendance, right? And so if we're talking about root causes, um, I think just frankly speaking, a lot of the conferences that we attend are so far out of the price range of most, working professionals, right? And or the roles that they're currently occupying, it would be very difficult for them to justify to their companies as to why their company should support them in attending these types of events. And so that sort of leads people to sort of live in their silo. And that silo could be the specific team that they work on. Because I also, from time to time, do see folks that are relatively unnetworked even within their own organizations, right? Like say, hey, do you know Joe Schmo? Or hey, you ought to talk to Jack when you get back to the office. It's like, who is that? Or how do I get in contact with that person? But they're all playing on the same team. And so, there is, if there is a secret sauce, I think that has a lot to do with it. Is understanding how to leverage networks to your benefit.
So, okay, so now I want to go back to being at Howard and meeting
Mhm.
these cohorts of kids that were just kids, young men and women who were just going through these, like, the inaugural class, if you would. Right?
Mhm.
Of all of them, they were all amazing, like, networkers. They said, like, just all the things I want my kids to do: look someone in the eye, say, act
Yeah.
interested, ask questions, get numbers, exchange, follow up. And, like,
Yeah.
I did that with them. They did that with me. Are they the exception? Like, are you seeing those cohorts go on and outperforming on the network side and on the tap? It sounds like there's just not a lot of tapping that's going on, or shoulder tapping. So
Yeah.
are you in touch with them? Are they getting shoulder tapped are from the Howard program? Or is it, I don't know. I always believe that waterfalls start with a drop of water. To me, that Howard program was like more than a drop of water. That was like a fire hose that was starting that would turn
Right.
uh, into a waterfall. But, like, are you seeing structural change, or is there still like a hand on the scale that's not helping?
Yeah. So, Dan, I believe that the Marriott-Sorenson scholars are special for so many reasons. But a lot of the things that you touched on, um, those skills are taught,
Yeah.
right? Um, and so, I don't want to completely remove the onus from an individual professional, right? If you want something, you do. It's gonna require some work on your behalf. You are gonna have to, get up and get after it, and all of those great things. And that's why I often advise folks, hey, your fortune is found in the follow up. There literally can be no fortune if you're not following up. And so it is crucially important to, I think, in acknowledging the success of those Marriott-Sorenson scholars, that acknowledgement has to start with the deep relationships that were leveraged
Mm-hmm.
to build out that program. And also, again, the prep of it all, of preparing those scholars to go out and be great. And to answer your question, yes, they are, as you probably could imagine, out doing phenomenal things. I've been super excited since graduation was in May. Seniors are now starting their full time roles. And it has just tickled me pink to receive, pictures from their desk on their first day at their, first post graduation job, and getting updates on, hey, I've got these super exciting assignments coming up, and oh my goodness, I took a meeting with my CEO this morning. Those aren't normal conversations that you hear typically from recent college graduates, but they were built to move differently once they got out into the world, and so they're doing that.
And also
Very proud
having
of
those,
them.
I don't know if some people would call them soft skills, but I think it's a hard skill of just, like,
Absolutely.
eye contact, handshake, follow up.
Yes.
I love that. Fortune is
Yes.
in the follow up. So,
Yeah.
and is that, this is where I get, like, lost. So, okay, so not looking at the Howard grads,
Mhm.
you're looking at, let's just say you take a sample of hospitality professionals early in their career. Do they not have those hard skills? Is that, there's probably something structural that's putting downward pressure on, but then are they also not trained in those hard and soft skills to be able to find the fortune in their follow-up and be able to do it properly? And are the organizations that you're involved with helping to shift that paradigm?
In too many instances, Dan, the answer is no. They are not operating with the same level of speed and skill. Um, I recently had a young woman reach out to me. She's a recent college graduate and said, "Hi, I graduated from XYZ university just recently in May," and said, um, you know, I don't have a job. I'm looking for a full time role, and naturally, and she was put in touch with me. She ran into someone else that I knew, and they said, "Hey, you should probably give Ashli Johnson a call." And so, of course, my first question was, "Well, what were you doing while you were an undergrad? Where were you interning? And how is it that you graduated without offers?" And she was actually very candid in saying, "Yeah, I wasn't really paying attention to a lot of that in undergrad. And, I figured that, once I graduated, I would just be able to find a job like any other normal person," not realizing that part of the education that she was receiving from her university or from that particular hospitality program should have also been rooted in what's reality. What does reality look like post graduation? It's not just about what's in the textbook, but more importantly, how am I leveraging alumni networks? How am I leveraging on campus career services, et cetera, et cetera? And so I certainly see in her um, areas of opportunity for her to grow by way of professional development, that because she was not necessarily exercising that muscle in college, frankly, it probably will put her at a bit of a disadvantage if she isn't able to pivot very quickly into a role. And so I think that that's not only applicable for young
Mm.
professionals, folks that are just coming out of school, but I also think that it is applicable to the millions of people that sort of fell into hospitality. We hear these stories often. I wasn't thinking about working in hospitality. I just needed to start serving to make ends meet. And then I look up and it's 20 years later and I don't know, a restaurant manager or what have you. I think um, in too many instances, just been so focused on the work that we have ignored the importance of having strategy when pursuing career goals.
Mm. As you're talking, just like thinking out loud here. So, as you were talking, I envisioned two types of people entering into the hospitality workforce, right? So, um, there's the college grad from a hospitality program, right? That would go into probably some kind of management, starting off management. And then there's people with no, sometimes high school or college grad, sometimes high school,
Mhm,
that go in and can be that dishwasher. Like a college
mhm.
grad probably wouldn't go and start being a dishwasher or a rooms attendant, right? More often than not. But I
More
do
often.
think also that um, so there's kind of two tracks to go in. And I think maybe I was mistaken in the sense that the career path is so steep. I think maybe I need to rethink that to say, I think the career path can be so steep for the people entering the hospitality workforce without a college degree. Maybe they're
Okay.
going in those entry level ones, but again, they don't have those hard skill or soft skills to kind of lift themselves up or get onto a career path to management. But it does exist and it is steep. But maybe I'm
Okay.
thinking, and then they're also entering that workforce with no debt on their shoulders either, right?
Mhm,
And then you
mhm.
have someone
Yep.
coming from college with debt on their shoulders. They have a whole other different ball of
Yes.
wax, like from paying for rent, for paying for their college loans, and then maybe that becomes into like you're in survival mode just to like make ends meet to where
Mhm.
you're just spent and you don't want to go and do the extra networking and all that other stuff. I'm just thinking out loud here.
Right.
Is there
Yes.
something in
Yes.
that?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I find that I come across black and brown hospitality professionals in particular, um, and the notion typically is a conference. Like I can't take time off of work for that. Um, and of course, the initial thought is this isn't a professional development opportunity when it 1,000% is, right?
Mm.
I also hear, I'm not really sure what that can do for me. I've also heard, just in my experience with promoting Hued 2024, is that it's like, hey, well, let me see if my company will pay for it. And my follow up question is always immediately, what if they don't? Does that mean that you're willing to walk away from investing in your own professional development? So, does that mean if your company is unwilling to make the investment, that you will be unwilling to make the investment?
Mm.
And so, those are very real considerations for so many Black and Brown leaders in our business. And so, I think part of it is sort of rewriting the narrative around how important these things really are,
Yeah.
and who ultimately is responsible for making the investment here. And the onus is not always on your employer. These are just the facts.
Yeah, and I think like if you read all the personal finance books or like I don't know, self-improvement books or like listen to the Tony Robbinses of the world and all that. They all, what they all, I think what they all say is invest in yourself first or pay yourself first. And to
Yes.
me, going to a conference or
Mhm.
buying a book or whatever is investing in yourself. And yeah, it's always great when other people cover the cost, but you know, your Hued conference is not exorbitantly expensive. Just give everyone a taste.
Intentionally so.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean,
I did not want registration cost or registration fee to be a barrier to entry,
mm,
mostly because I know that that is a huge barrier to entry for so many of the events that you and I attend on an annual basis. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's priced such that people can find their way there, and even added a payment plan option, Dan, because the last thing that I want to hear from someone is, "Oh, I really need to be there, but I can't somehow." We want to eliminate those barriers.
so another question that I have is thinking about this as Hued is meant for black and brown hospitality professionals. Is
Mhm.
there a fear that you're creating an island that's not penetrating the downward pressure that I mentioned before, or is this just a convocation of getting these people together to inspire them to then go and put pressure on what's upward pressure on what's pushing what they feel is pushing them down structurally?
Yeah, I would say it's maybe a little bit of both.
Mm.
The reality of it is that we could say that there is a game at play and one needs to understand the rules of engagement. And that's not even necessarily me saying that you need to play by the rules.
Mm.
I'm just a champion of folks having a strategy and understanding where the industry is, where your organization is in that industry, and how can you navigate your way to where it is that you want to be, regardless of the game at play or rules, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's more about understanding the business that we work in, and then identifying where you want to go and how do I get there. So,
So let's do another thought experiment then. So
uh-huh.
let's pretend there is I don't know, a young professional. Let's say they've been working, they're in a middle on a path to management. They've been in the workforce after college, in hospitality for 3 or 5 years. Let's say 5 years. Why not? And then they either want to go to New Orleans for Hued, or they're driving distance, and they've asked their employer to sponsor them to go, but there's no budget for it.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're saddled with this: do I invest in myself to go, or just take a pass? Let's pretend that they decide to take the invest in themselves route. What is the goal, or what do you foresee as the outcome of their experience at this unconference?
Yeah. So for the person that has been in the industry for perhaps a shorter clip of time, what they're going to get at Hospitality Hued is for starters, if you can see it, you can be it, right? So the amount of C-suite level executives and very high ranking Black and brown professionals that look like you, maybe came from the same communities that you've come from, they are actually already in the roles, right? So I think that that's a huge piece of, oh, wow, I didn't even know that someone that I can relate to is even in a role that I could potentially ascend to at some point. I think the other key piece is that you are surrounding yourself with other folks that are like-minded by way of, hey, I want to understand and master this business. I always say you need enough information and understanding to be dangerous out here, right? Without fully understanding, the work that we're doing, and more importantly, the players that really make our industry go round, you are operating at a bit of a deficit.
Mm.
And I would also say that it's really important that people understand where it is that you want to go. I talk to folks on a daily basis. They say, hey, I don't know, working in an accounting role, but I'm really intrigued by our technology team, and I actually studied IT in school. I'm just not really sure how to get over there to that other team. My first question is always, does your leadership have any idea of your interest? Like, no, not really. I wasn't sure what to say or how to say it, or maybe I was so solely focused on making sure that they knew that I was appreciative of the role that I'm currently in, that they just didn't want to, shake the boat. And so I think it's important to obviously to have a network, but more importantly, to have a network that knows what it is that you're interested in, such that they can rally around you and support you accordingly.
Mm. Okay, and now that's awesome. And then a lot of the talk we've been having now is about, okay, so you're in management, you want to get to that job or be a regional, it might not be there, but you're also really passionate about a path to ownership, right? Mm-hmm. And I can I don't know, I feel pretty comfortable saying that, like, okay, while on the career path, with not the ownership, but the career path, mm-hmm. a diverse pool of hospitality workers from ground level to management is diverse, right? But
sure,
there's a choke point getting up into the higher levels of management. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still there. It's not good. It's not great. But there is some diversity that goes up there. What I can say on the ownership side is I think it's much worse than that, the ratio, right?
Yes.
Am I correct in that?
Absolutely.
Is there any data to like paint a picture between both of those different scenarios?
Not that I'm aware of, not within the same sort of report. There is a need for more data in that area. It's a common sort of inquiry, like, hey, how do I become a hotel owner? And my pushback to that is always, tell me more about why you're interested in owning a hotel. Because I typically like to explore defining the title of being an owner versus the title of being an investor. Mm-hmm. And so what I think so many folks have not really considered is that, hey, if I'm even at a director or vice president role, I make X amount of dollars a year. Uh, I likely have a family that I need to support. Where am I going to go raise the equity necessary to purchase a hotel
Mm.
or a restaurant, to become a hotel owner or restaurant owner? Um, is it possible? Yes. A much harder lift? Absolutely. Versus maybe I have some resources that are set aside, and I very well could identify developers that would provide opportunity for me to invest in a hotel
Hmm.
or a restaurant, become a franchisee, something of that nature. That would have a much lower barrier to entry in terms of how capital intensive it could be.
Yeah.
So instead of me
Mm.
trying to figure out where to find $40 million, I can maybe say, hey, I can draw from my 401k and my savings, and I can invest, 50,000, 25,000, 100,000, depending upon the deal and the developer and what their appetite is, sort of for engaging unaccredited investors, or
Mhm.
maybe even first time investors. But what that does is really diversify your financial portfolio such that you're in the game, you're receiving dividends on likely a quarterly basis, and at the end of a hold period, if we're talking about a select to mid-scale type of property, I mean, I'm going to see some pretty significant returns when that hotel sells in maybe 5 to 7 years. And let's not even jump into the beauty of capital gains. And so
Yeah, and
it really
depreciation.
opens. Absolutely, absolutely, and it really opens up another door.
Yeah, the only way that you understand that kind of ownership, I'm putting quote air
Hmm.
quotes, is
Hmm.
by actually putting some slugs of capital to work. And you can do it in
Yeah,
investing in something as liquid and freely traded as a REIT and
yeah,
benefit that way.
absolutely.
Um, I've also, I know over my career, I would, if I was doing furniture for hotels, oftentimes to understand like that whole idea of getting a $40 million slug. I mean,
Yeah,
it's so capital intensive and unrealistic, and like you need a track record before you can raise that money, unless you
for
had
sure.
like a wealthy relative die and leave it to you, which doesn't happen
Yeah,
very often. Um,
yeah.
the best way to understand how all that works is by getting skin in the game, so to speak. And one of the ways
Yes.
that I
Yes.
found over the course of my career is if I was doing furniture for a hotel, um,
Mhm.
I would ask, and more often than not, like 99 out of 100 times, the answer is no. But it's like, hey, do you do any friends and family tranches of that I could write a check and put it in this property? I believe, obviously, you still have to do the work and believe in the property and the team
Sure.
and
Sure.
all that. But 99 out of 100 times it's a no, but you know what, sometimes there's a yes, and
Yes.
those can be really great investments. And then also there's all these different vehicles, from crowdfunding, which is even smaller tranches, to bigger, and then you just
Mhm.
see it. And it's not like you're going to see results right away because they're not liquid, but over the
Right.
years you get K1s, you get depreciation, you can take, you get
Mhm.
income, you get appreciation. You can also lose everything, but
Absolutely.
it's a good
Risk
way to like
is a
just
real thing.
get your toe in there. But I feel like, and the tax code too is just heavily skewed towards owners rather than W-2 earners as well.
100%. I recently was having a conversation with the CEO of a management company, um, uh, brilliant guy, and he said, as owners, we're always trying to get our teams to think like owners, right? Like that's a very like clear message that we give to teams all the time. Like, hey, we need you to have an owner mindset. And he said, one day I just woke up and thought, what if I made my GMs owners? It makes all the sense in the world. And he's like, Ashley, the way that they understand the business now, that I've sat down and sort of walked them through. Hey, as an owner, this is what I'm looking at. This is how you make these numbers play around and dance. And when we get this right, this is what happens. And oh, by the way, in addition to your base salary and bonus for whatever your contributions are as a general manager, I'm also going to give you 5%, a 5% equity stake in this property.
Mm.
It's like, he's like, I don't know why I didn't think about this 20 years ago. It makes all the difference in the world. And so, my message to, folks that are already working out in the industry, there are so many ways that you can sort of have, even for yourself, a paradigm
Mm.
shift in how you think about what your contributions are to this industry, and more importantly, what your returns could potentially be.
Yeah, one of my favorite business books I've ever read is it's called The Great Game of Business by a guy named Jack Stack. And he had some business that was like, um, God, what did they do? They like remanufactured engines, I think in Indiana somewhere. So like they take old tractor engines or big semi engines and clean them up, rebore them, retool them, fix them up, and send them, and I don't know, resell them. But what he did is he did this whole open book system in this manufacturing business, and where every department, it was all open book. So every department had their own P&L and balance sheet, and they knew their 1 to 5 numbers, that their
Yeah.
actions, their efficiency, their attention to detail and quality, how if they performed over a certain amount, how it would benefit not just them, but the company, and then also their
Yes.
department and their team. And it really gets everyone looking at everything much differently to look at it as an owner.
Okay.
And it's a difficult thing as a business owner to kind of open the kimono, so to speak. But if
Yeah.
you do it,
Yeah.
and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes if you do it the wrong way, it can backfire and not be good. But if you do it the
Sure.
right way, you can really get everyone aligned and understanding it. And you have to teach like principles of accounting as well. But
Absolutely.
it's pretty
Absolutely.
amazing.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a lot of what I'm referring to when I use the phrase the business of service.
Mm.
That's why those Marriott-Sorenson scholars, it was so important for me to ensure that they understood how the business aspect of hospitality works while having an appreciation for the delivery of service, right? I can remember a time in my career, all I really understood about hospitality was, hey, I need to be acknowledging a guest as they are approaching me. I need to make sure that I'm creating these phenomenal memories. But I really had no frame of reference in terms of what does this mean for the business that I'm working in, right? I
Mm.
was literally thinking, my scope of comprehension at the time, being very young in the business, was like, hey, I gotta get my guest satisfaction scores high, and all I knew is that that meant that I was not going to be in trouble or under scrutiny by my manager. There was no correlation between what does guest satisfaction mean for rates? What should these rates mean for the hotel? How does that help us compete in this market? How does that influence how friendly our next visit from our asset manager is going to be? Like, how does that influence what capital expenditures are?
Yeah, how
Like,
much does that lower your customer acquisition costs too? And then that,
exactly.
that's less marketing, and you get them, you build a relationship with them, and then they start. I don't even know that much about hotel operations, but like you get them to start booking on the hotel's website directly and not through some
Versus a third party.
third
Yes.
party. Like
Yeah.
it's amazing, and you get them write them thank you notes. They're going to keep coming back. And it's all going to drop to the bottom line. But I think, oh, that's really
Exactly.
interesting. So bringing it back to Hospitality Hued, if I've been in the business, in my business on my career path for 5 years, or I'm a higher level manager or owner or investor. So aside from just like the the tools and the network and the investing in yourself that you'll have, light us up with who you have going there, because it's actually pretty awesome. Like I wasn't planning on going, and now I'm trying to see if I can move some things around to get there, because New Orleans is also just freaking awesome. But
I
like
mean,
you have a
it's
really
an
good
amazing
group of
city.
people going there.
Yeah, we have a super exciting lineup of speakers. We probably don't have time to highlight them all,
Mm.
but some folks that I will sort of extract to elevate for today's conversation would certainly include John Fareed, who is the global chairman of Horwath HTL. It's the largest hospitality consulting firm in the world. Um, John also recently wrote a book entitled From Invisible to Icon, which I think uh, will resonate so much with our audience about
I
how
think
to
he sounds
really,
like a good guest for this podcast.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, John, in his book, is really walking folks through how to establish yourself as an expert in your field.
Mm.
And isn't that what's required to get us to the next level? I'd say so. Um, we have a really dynamic husband and wife team out of Atlanta, Georgia, Julian and Kiersten Saunders. They are the creators of a platform called Rich and Regular, uh, all about personal finance. They both come from the hospitality industry and will share more about uh, how they were both able to retire before 40, which I think is phenomenal.
Fire. That's called
Yeah.
fire, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
They. I bet you also they would say invest in yourself.
100%.
They probably will have
Uh,
T-shirts that say "Invest in
yes.
yourself." Yeah, or a sign at least. They do look.
Exactly.
Yeah, I
Exactly.
like
And
their photo.
yeah, they are. Yeah, they're also authors and have a book out called Cashing Out. We have so many other phenomenal industry leaders, folks like Thomas Penny, president of Donahoe Hospitality Services. We've got the rock stars of the group, folks like Damon Lawrence from Howard Hospitality, folks like Jason Bass. Um, you know, a few years ago, Jason won an award that bestowed upon him the title of an icon of culture. I told him I will never, ever let him live that down.
That was
And
through
so,
Independent Lodging Congress, right? I think
yes,
we were there
yes.
at the same time, but didn't know each other and didn't talk to each other. So,
What a
but
shame,
I do
Dan.
remember
What a
Jason.
shame. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He's a cool guy.
Mm.
Uh, so yeah, Jason will be there. Kendra Plummer, who is the founder of Elise Capital, um, is a phenomenal example of how to transition from a more traditional trajectory in hospitality to becoming a hotel developer and hotel owner.
Mm.
And so there's just so many great people. Bashar Wali is coming and will speak, founder of Practice Hospitality. So,
Oh, then I'm
so
I'm definitely
many,
not going if he's going. Bashar, are you picking that up?
so many phenomenal folks. Lauren Darnell, executive director of the Made in New Orleans Foundation. We've got all kinds of
Wow.
folks
And
that
I just also
that are
want
coming.
I've never been to Hospitality Hued,
Yeah,
um, but I can tell everyone who's listening and maybe considering, just knowing you and knowing the people that are there, it's not going to
yeah,
be like you're sitting in chairs and they're up on a podium.
right.
You are going to be able. There's going to be some time to mash up and talk and get to know people and build relationships. I'm go.
Absolutely.
I know there's going to be. So I. That sounds awesome. I need to move
I'd
some
have
things
it
around.
no other way, as you know, Dan. We're very intentional about, creating a space in which it was not overwhelming. So there's not going to be 500 or 2,500 or 5,000 people in attendance. The space was really created such that it is a safe space for audience to engage speakers in conversation, for you to be able to really get to know your neighbor uh, and essentially leave this unconference really with a bag of 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 gems and fortune, because we trust all folks will be following up. Um, and really just it growing your network, right?
And
Strengthening it.
just as you all know, you do not need to be black or brown solely to go. It is welcome to everyone. But the whole point
Absolutely.
is to talk about ascension and like all these other things that we were talking about, to like how to just help get that distribution of people working in hospitality on the lower side, in the lower parts of the org chart, to that ratio to equal the upper parts. And really,
Yes.
to me, I think it's so much of it is about making space for others, and just like thinking about that, having the kids who come out of the Howard program, like you're saying kids. I keep saying kids, but they are kids because I'm old now and I can say kids.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So I apologize to all of you, but like, let me be the old guy. So
they adore you, Dan.
yes, they're so awesome. But it's really just they were taught and trained the soft skills and the hard skills to get people to want to tap them on the shoulder.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
And I just think that it's so much of it is about making space, and not just that, but also just, you don't even have to be an official mentor. It's just like, hey,
Right.
how can I help? Where do you want to go? All those questions like, oh, you want to own a hotel? Well, why? Just asking why.
Well-
Sometimes people don't even, and I'm guilty of it too. I don't consider the why very much in everything I'm doing. It's really important to me to understand it. I've learned that with age, because I don't want to do
Yeah.
things if it doesn't line up with my why. But,
Sure.
that took 30, 40 years, 50. I'm almost 50, but shh, don't tell anyone. But anyway, it's like,
Don't look a day over 35.
yeah, it's my locks, my curly hair that my kids love. So, I don't know. It's I'm just really excited for you, and
Thank
talking
you.
about purpose and passion, and just you've never waited for anything. You've always grabbed the bull by the horn, so to speak. But it's just like,
Yeah.
now in everything that you do, I just love, and I'm just really envious that you're able to just come up with these ideas and do them. So I applaud you for that. And everyone,
Oh, my.
it's fine. It's like everyone can have the idea, and I'm actually pretty good at this too. But like it's one thing to have an idea and to talk about it, but then it's about finding that pathway to like take that step to actually make it real. Like, you can plot everything out on paper and make a spreadsheet and blah blah blah, but you actually have to do it. And failing is okay too. But it's like being able to take that step and make it real and bring people together and like shorten your own and other people's journeys is like, it's admirable. So I just want more people like you out there actually creating these great things, because you're also inspiring. And like with this podcast and just other events that I'm working on, I feel like this podcast and the community that we built, like, I just feel like there's a step of something in person at some point. So one of the main reasons I
Yes.
want to go, aside from like seeing you and gaining from all the content and helping to shorten others' journeys, is like, I want to be able to rip off and duplicate what you have going on, because I don't know if it's an unconference or just a bunch of dinners or so, but I feel like this whole community that we've built here, and you're a part of it, a strong part of it. There just needs to be more touch points. So I
Yes.
want to be inspired to think about what that is and find a path, because I'm in the marination stage, and I just really want to start thinking about like, what is that path for in person.
Yeah. Let's make it happen, Dan. Yeah. I mean, the touch point is crucially important to get people to share space. And so, I've been telling folks, as it relates to Hued 2024, the table has been built, right? Just pull up a chair. Let's get to it.
Oh yeah, and it's at the Four Seasons too, everyone. It's
Yeah.
like it's not at the Crown,
nice
the
table.
roadside in Crown Plaza, right? It's like it's gonna be awesome. So well, this has been awesome for me and incredible for me. If people wanted to learn more
Likewise.
about you or Hued, like, what's a good way for them to get in touch?
Yeah, definitely visit our website. It's hospitalityhued, HUED.com. They can follow us on Instagram if that's your thing. We're on the gram at Hospitality Hued. You can also find us on LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn. So, yeah, would love to have you all there. Looking forward to
I
it.
appreciate you so much, and thanks for
No,
coming
thank
back.
you.
It's always nice when people come back or want to come back.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me. It's such an awesome platform. And as always, absolutely love the work that you're doing.
And right back at you. And I think we're a good team. So
Thanks, Kim. Yeah.
thank you. And also, I'd be remiss without thanking our listeners. Without all of you, we wouldn't be here talking to Ashli, because we just grow by word of mouth and organically. Yeah, maybe I promoted a little bit on LinkedIn, but I don't pay for the ads. Not yet anyway. So, but please, if you're in New Orleans or you're there in August, or you want to go, you want to check this out, go, because I know it's going to be awesome. Thank you, everyone.